Good morning, I'm Andy from Float My Boat, and today we're just going to put a pontoon together on Torquay Harbour. It's late November, it's fairly cold, we're going to be reasonably quick about this. I'm hoping we're going to get it done in about an hour, but we're going to explain first of all just how a double goes together. Double docks, which is a double, we call a double cube, double V's, and we've got some starter cubes in here as well. But hopefully by the end of the video you'll understand what orientation blocks should go in, how they should be laid out, and there's a few little do's and don'ts that will just make your life a lot easier when putting this together. So starting with the general blocks, we've got single V's, we've got double V's, we've got double blocks, and over here we've got a single cube as well. There's a single. On the side of these we have pontoon fenders, we call them. These are brilliant for stopping your boat. So it's a boat at your dock getting damaged at a later date, which saves these ones getting damaged. They're very easy to replace. We've got what we call a large pin. We've got a nuts and bolts. We've got a dock key. Rubber mallet, not necessary, but certainly easier to put things in place if you need to hit something. And we've got a small pin. Difference, which I'll show you quickly. Large pins, small pins. One more thing. Spacers. That's a double spacer. We do a single spacer as well. The single spacer is just half the size. When putting your dock together, what we simply do is, the easiest way to do it is you'll have a plan from us. With that plan, what we'll simply do is lay everything out for you, but try and follow that plan exactly. We'll show you which orientation things go. I put these two like this because effectively if you're looking at these, you'll be able to see the logo Float My Boat. On that logo, you've also got pins all the way around the corners there. 1, 2, 3, 4. And the same, it goes here, 1, 2, 3, 4. When doing a dock, you must try and get everything to run the same way. When you're using singles, it's not such an issue, but with doubles, you certainly want the doubles all going in the same direction. So effectively, when I put this one here, what I can't do is put it like that. I must put it, Float My Boat logo, in the same direction. And then that will float over the top of the other one. Right, as I just explained, these have got numbers 1, 2, 3, 4. That's exactly the same as these ones here. If we're looking at the only way to do this is there's no numbers on the top of these ones. So the only way to do it is with your fingers. That's a 4. That's a 1. Hopefully you can see that on the video. That's a 4. From the bottom of there to the top of there, 4 fingers. 1 finger. That's on this side here. That's a 2. That's a 3. Okay, so once we know that orientation, we've got to go the same orientation as this. So that being my 4, I want to make sure my 1 never orientates with the 1 here or the 2 here or anything like that. We need to make sure we're definitely running in the same orientation. So where I've got a 2 here, it needs to be the same as a 2 here, it needs the same as a 2 here. So if that makes sense to you, this needs to be a 2 here. So it should go 2, 2. If there was one here, it'd be 2. And you'll see that they all sit nicely together. 4 is always the heaviest. So when you see here, you've got a 3 and a 4. 3, 4. 4 is always below a 3. 1 is the lightest, 4 is the heaviest, or 1 is the top, 4 is the bottom. So in this situation here, it would sit like that. It's a very common mistake when it seems to want to slide under like that, but that's wrong, because as you can see, there's a problem there. So look at it, that's a 3, that's a 4. So the 3 always sits above the 4, and as you'll see, it all sits nice and smoothly then. So now we know our orientation is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. We know that this is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, which we can check here. can see, that's a 2, that will be a 3, and that will be a 4. Again, 3 sits above 4, 2 sits below 1. And we've started our block. The orientation of this one we'll put on the screen for you later, but you'll see what we're trying to create. Now what we've got to do is keep putting everything in place exactly the same as that. It's typically easier to start putting everything in place before we start pinning everything together. We can then roughly get our layout, make sure we've got all our blocks, and what we don't have to do is take it all apart to go back and get something else. So I'm just going to start putting everything together. If you've seen this, I'll explain it later. It just makes things a lot easier. It's a bit like a rubber mallet, but you can dot the top of pins with this rather than hurting your feet at a later date. Again, we're just looking for the orientations and the float my boat. Once we know that float my boat, we also make sure they're all sitting the right way. That's a 3, so 3 is going to sit below a 1 and a 2. That's a 4, that's a 4 as well. So as we can see, that's a 3, which is lower, that's a 2, that's a 1. 3 needs to be on the bottom. Just slide it in. Sometimes if you're on slightly uneven ground, these orientations can seem a little bit odd, but you need to be very careful about how you put them all together. 3's bottom, 2's next, 1's there. We can see that when we look at it in here. 3's the lowest, 3 being the 3, 2 being the middle one, 1 being the top one. 3, 2, 1. And if we had a 4, obviously it would sit in here as right underneath. So again, that's a 2, that's a 3, that would be a 4. So there's a perfect situation where the 2 feels like it wants to, you're not quite sure where it's going to go, but we know the 2 is definitely above a 3, so we just need to lift that up onto there. Or we know those 2 is a 1 and a 1, which is certainly going to be just on this. If you've got a 4 and a 3 together and you're unsure which one it is, it's always going to be a 4. On the other side, where you've got a 2 and a 1, it'll always be a 1. So on the middle of a double, you've got 2 options, 3 or 4, it's always going to be a 4. On the other side, you've got a 1 and a 2, it will always be a 1. We're only doing this one 5 long, so it's going to be nice and easy. Again, float my boat, float my boat. We know that's 1, so it's the top, and we know that's a 4, so it's the bottom. So it makes it nice and easy when we've got any choice like that. That's a 4, definitely going to the bottom. That's a 1, definitely going to the top. So we just need to twist that slightly, drop it underneath. That's all we're doing there. In this situation here, I'm certainly going to want to work backwards that way. I don't want to sort of try to put all the middle ones in halfway there, so I'm going to work back with these ones in place now first, and I'll be back to start the next ones later. I'm looking for the same orientation. I want a 3 and a 2 on this end here, so I've got to try and find that 3 and 2. That's a 1, so I know I don't want a 1 on this end, I want a 1 on the far end. See the same, that's a 1 and that's a 1, so it's the same orientation, a 1 again. So 1 and 3, that's obviously going to be a 4, so the 4 is the lowest, 1's the highest. It's not going in there, it's going this way, but we know that 1's the highest, 4's the lowest. 1 being the highest, 4 being the lowest. This is the next one, will be the this is a starter block or starter roller. You'll see on this one, it's lower here, which allows the boat just to get up a little bit quicker. Whereas on this one, it's just a little bit higher again. So we tend to only put one of these in because the boat actually will sit just over the top of this when it's finished, but the very first one coming up onto it does allow it to just come up a little bit easier. Again, I'm looking for the ones. On this one, we're looking for the lug sits here, so it's one finger on the top, then it's 2 fingers, 3 fingers, and 4 fingers. So 1 finger, 2 finger, 3 finger, 4 fingers. So we know that that is number 1. Number 1 always sits on top, remember? Number 4 sits at the bottom. So we're in. I could at this point start putting things together slightly, just to start holding bits and bobs together. So I might just put a couple of pins in just to hold things in place. Big cushion pins always go in the middle. You can see the nice big hole we're trying to create. So that hole there is perfect for that there. We just do that, little stamp, in it goes. We don't need to start tightening things up yet. We can do the same again. Push them in, get them roughly in place. You might find some of these don't go in perfectly at this point. If they don't go in perfectly at this point, it doesn't really matter. It could be on an even surface. If the sun's on these, they can blur out slightly. If half's in the shade, half's in the sunlight, that's the type of thing where suddenly this can expand a little bit. They do have valves on them. You can either use those valves for putting water in them to float them slightly, but they'll also allow it to just expand and contract very, very slightly. But as I say, if those don't go in perfectly at the moment, don't stress too much. That in place for the time being. On the back edge here, I'm just going to put a quick nut and bolt. The reason we use nut and bolts around the outside, you can use a small pin just on the outside to pop it down, put it in. You can use a big pin even, but the big pins tend to sort of flop around a little bit if you do it, because obviously this edge here is sticking out like this. The little pins are much better if you want to use a little pin on the outside. They sit down nicely, turn in and don't come out. The one advantage of that is once you've clicked it round, as you can see, once it goes through there and then turns around to that position there, you won't be able to get that pin out. Explain that a little bit better there. That sits through like that, and then once it goes right the way through, you turn the pin to there. Sorry, you put it through like that, turn the pin. These lock into here and here, and then those will then lock underneath and not be able to pull themselves out. That's it, they're ideal for this. Whereas with the nut and bolts, the advantage to the nut and bolt is you've got a hole all the way through it. So if you're tying up to something, you don't lose your anchor point, because at the moment I can put a rope around there and tie off to a boat, I can tie off to a fender, I can tie off to a finger, I can tie off to a harbour wall, wherever we are. So the great thing about this is they've still got the lugs that you still want to get through these points here. That's simply a case of pushing it through, nut underneath, and up it goes. It's not cross-threaded. You'll see that there's a couple of little triangles cut into there, and you'll see that they're directional. They go up, vertically down, up, vertically down. Underneath here, I don't know if you can see it, but possibly you might be able to see it. There's a couple of little areas under here that these, once they're tightened up to, will clamp onto. Once they clamp onto them, they effectively become like a non-return barb. It'll go into it, but it won't actually turn around back into it. So you need to get these tight-ish. Don't over-tighten them. If you over-tighten them, they can break the top seals here. You'll see there's a moulding line around the top. There's a moulding line around the top here, which is right up here, on top of the what should we say, on top of the flange. And that there line, if you do hit it with a hammer or anything like that, can crack on that line. Or alternatively, if you over tighten these over time, you can get a crack in these. So just these need to be finger tight, maybe a little bit more than finger tight. But what we're not trying to do is use a hammer to hit these, hit them up with. This is plastic, guys. It's not stainless steel. So effectively, to do this at the moment, I'm not going to over tighten these because this is just a demo. But effectively, we'd bring those up to there. And also at the moment, I just want a little bit of plate, you'll hear it sort of click into place. I don't know if you hear that. You get one click there, and then suddenly it'll click. Hear that? That click is that small triangle clicking up into their lock positions, and suddenly you can't unlock it. If you do want to unlock this, I'd recommend either a pair of expandable pliers, you know, the ones that slide through themselves, or alternative, as I've just said, don't hit it with a hammer. If you just very gently tap it backwards, you can, by pushing that down, pulling that up, and just tapping with a hammer, it will come off. But ideally, you want to tighten it up so it clicks in, and that is rock solid. Right, building the rest of it.